Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Initially, I was going to do a video on the importance of identity, or owning self identification and how that plays a part in the success or the failure of a people, of a collective group of people. The focus was going to be mainly African American and African American Muslims because that is where most of my scholarship is aimed. As I was preparing my notes and looking at what I wanted to look at and getting my thoughts together, I don't know why, but I got this epiphany, and it sort of hit me that many of the people who watch my videos, they don't really know anything about me. So I decided to switch it up a little bit and just sort of give a little information on myself, to sort of give people a better idea of who I am. Um, I am a U.S. Army veteran, combat veteran. I served in northern Iraq. I spent 4 years in the military. I served in a combat mission called Operation Provide Comfort. And that mission was to stop the Iraqis and the Kurds from killing each other. And it was pretty much one-sided, where the Iraqis were slaughtering the Kurds, chasing them up into the mountains. The area that we were in, wasn't friendly, it wasn't fun, so to speak. But let me go back. I'll come back to that. I'm actually born in Detroit, Michigan. I am a diehard Detroit fan. I'm a diehard Michigan fan. I support any and everything coming out of Michigan, and I love my city of Detroit. I moved out of Detroit and moved to a city in Ohio. From there, I went into the U.S. military. The reason I went into the military, this was prior to Islam. I wasn't Muslim at that time. My father, and this is a shout out to black fathers too. My father told me when I was younger, you have some choices to make and you have time to think about what you want to do. He said, when you graduate from high school and you turn 18, these are your choices. He said, you can go to school. He said, if you go to school, though, you have to maintain at least a C average. And you can live here free. He said, or you can get a job. If you get a job, you're going to help pay bills here. You're not just going to have a job, make money, and live here rent free. You're going to help pay bills. He said, or you can go into the military like I did. He said, or you can live and sleep on the driveway. I didn't think much of it at that time. I was like, okay, whatever. Well, I graduated from high school and then I turned 18. And I remember he came up and he, said happy birthday to me. And then he said, okay, what are you going to do? And I said, well, me and the homies, we're going to go out. And he said, no. That's not what I'm talking about. With your life, what are you going to do? I was like, what? What are you talking about? I'm going to go out. He said, no. He said, if you remember correctly, when you were 16 or 17, whatever I was, 16 about to turn 17, he said, I told you that you had to make a choice upon graduation and turning 18, whichever came first. He said, so have you made your decision? And to be honest, I hadn't given it much thought. I was like, oh boy, man, he was serious. Pops is clowning. I wasn't, by any stretch of the imagination, an academic. Did not like high school. Had fun in high school, but didn't like the actual schoolwork. And I have an opinion on that as well, but I'll save that for another day, another video. Anyway, I said, I'll go in the military. Okay, I'll go in the Army. So got with a recruiter. Initially, I wanted to go into the Marine Corps, but the Marine Corps couldn't guarantee me uh, the job that I wanted. When you go into the Marine Corps, you basically, everyone is a basic rifleman or an infantryman. And then from there, after you take your test, you go to basic training, then they sort of tell you where you're going to go. And I wasn't going for that because they could have made me a cook or a janitor or a toilet cleaner or whatever. I'm not going into the unknown like that. So I was like, nah, I'm cool on the Marine Corps. I didn't want to go into the Navy because I was not going to be out on a boat with a bunch of fellas for God knows how long riding around in the ocean. I'm not a water guy like that. I fell into the trap of thinking that the Air Force was one of the wackest of the whack and they were soft, and they weren't. But I learned different once I actually got into the military. So I decided to go into the Army like my father did, and my father's father served. So I go in, and I was 18, maybe about to turn 19, something like that by the time I left. Um, After basic training down in Alabama, they sent me to Germany, which was one of my, in the Army, they give you what's called a wish list. And the wish list is where would you like to be stationed? And they give you 5 choices, and they try to give you what you want. My father served in Germany, and I heard all the stories about the fun that he had in Germany and all of that. So I rode with Germany, and I ended up being sent to Frankfurt, Germany. Um, Remember now, I'm 18, 19. I was probably 19 at the time because I went through basic training and AIT, which is my advanced individual training. And I forgot to leave out what my job was. I was military police. I was the Popo 5-0 one time for the military. So I went to Frankfurt, Germany, and went to my unit, and immediately I hooked up with the brothers. And I was I want to say a little less than experienced. Um, in high school, I wasn't a drinker. I was more afraid of my father, and getting in trouble. I wasn't a criminal. I wasn't out slanging and banging and doing all these things. So I was, uh, rather inexperienced as far as doing certain things myself. It wasn't until I got into the military that I started drinking alcohol and partying and doing what you would expect a 19-year-old released into the wilds of Frankfurt, Germany by himself would be doing. And I had a crew of fellas that I hung with, and we were together just about every day. We kicked it every day. We drank every day almost. We partied. We went to clubs. We traveled. We did the whole nine. During my time in the service, um, I saw a lot. I experienced a lot, um, good and bad. A lot of enlightening, learning about human nature, learning about people, seeing the good and the bad in people. Um, but I'll take it back to what my primary everyday life was. It was drinking and hanging out with the opposite sex and, just kicking it every day. Literally. In the military, depending upon where you're stationed, there's not a whole lot to do but that. Unless you get it like a real, and to be honest, Germany really was a really good duty station where I was stationed, but I was too young and stupid and immature to realize the opportunity that I had in front of me, meaning the ability to travel, to really go out and travel and explore and see things. I was too busy hanging with the homies and doing what we were doing. to really take full advantage of that. So I definitely cannot blame that on the military. That was on me. So anyway, fast forward a little bit of time, maybe 2 years or so, and I'm heavily into partying and heavily into going to the club, the military clubs, and I'd go 4 nights a week, maybe 4 or 5 nights a week, and drink almost all the time. I wasn't an alcoholic. I know that sounds like, oh, he was probably an alcoholic. No, I was never addicted to alcohol, but that's just what we all did. Everybody did it. So one day, and this is I'm going to give this to you in the literal sense. One day, it felt like the Creator grabbed me by my shoulders and pulled me out of the eye of a storm. And this is really how I remember it. That's how I liken it to. If you're in the eye of a storm, inside of the eye of the storm is peaceful. You don't see the destruction that's going on around you. So one day, for whatever reason, actually, let me backtrack that. I know what the reason was. One of the guys that used to hang with us, he was a Mexican cat. Used to drink tequila straight out the bottle, fifth of tequila, take it to the head. His kidneys gave out, and he ended up having to have emergency surgery, and he got sent back to the States. And something sort of hit me, like I got scared in myself. I didn't tell anybody, but I got scared, like, oh my, I'm drinking with this guy, like, is this going to happen to me? And then that's when I felt like the Creator pulled me back from the eye of the storm and put me in the storm to let me see what was going on. And each one of the guys that was in my crew, I was able to then see the issues that they were having individually. And I'm not going to put anybody out or say any specifics, but I was like, oh, okay. This is, woo. Okay, I need to make a change. I said, literally, specifically to the Creator, I don't know where I'm supposed to be, but wherever I'm supposed to be, please get me there. The very next day, a Muslim was assigned to my unit. His name was Gary Davis. And I still, to this day, keep in touch with Gary Davis. He's on my friends list on Facebook. He's a good brother. And I was so glad that we were able to reconnect via Facebook. So shout out to Facebook for that bit of good. Gary Davis was a higher rank than me. I was a lowly private and he was a sergeant. Gary would hang with all the brothers. He kicked it with us. But when we started engaging in certain things, be it alcohol or, a bunch of stuff that we were into, he would always just sort of fade, slide out. And he would do it like on the low. It wasn't a production. It wasn't you guys are doing this and therefore I got to leave and you guys are bad. You need to change it. It was none of that. He would just dip. So one day I caught, it hit me like, this dude he's always just like on some Batman stuff, disappearing. Let me go find out what's up with him. Because I thought maybe he was a little bit of a weirdo, to be honest with you. So I approached him one day and I asked him, like, what's happening with you? And he told me I'm Muslim. And I'm like, okay, and like, what does that mean? You can't drink? You can't do this? He was like, no, I can't do none of that. I'm like, what? like no women, no. He was like, nah, I can't. I'm not supposed to be doing that. And again, I'm not putting perfection on anybody. I'm just saying this is what he said to me about what the Muslims should and shouldn't be doing. I'm like, in my mind, I'm like, man, this dude is tripping. Ain't no way I'm giving up. I'm having too much fun. But then I had to remember the destruction of the storm. So, like most black people, I came to Islam through the bab of the autobiography of Malcolm X. My man gave me that book to read, and I inhaled that book. And that's not a small book to read. The autobiography, that's a pretty good sized book, and it's a lot of information, a lot of detail, and a lot of information to take in. I read that book in nothing flat. I mean, I was reading it constantly. When I'm at work, I'm reading it. When I was home, I was reading it. I was reading it. And that was the turning on of the proverbial light in my mind. And that's when I started rethinking my lifestyle and thinking about the direction that I wanted to go in. After that book, the brother gave me other books. Now, I'm going to be transparent. Some of the books we were reading, upon reflection, were books that we books we shouldn't have been reading. Malachi Z. York and 5% books, 5% Nation, and I'm sure at that stage in his development, Gary was, he's not where he is now. I know him now. He's not on that stuff now, but that's the bab that most of us as African Americans come through. That's the experience that we have, and it's a journey of development and learning and acquiring knowledge and asking Allah for guidance, because you can get wrapped up in some nonsense, in some cultural nonsense, and some pro-black stuff that will not allow you to develop into what the Creator created you to be, which is a worshiper of Him. So as a Muslim, we understand that we are worshipers of Him. That is the purpose of our existence, is to worship Him. And we get there, many of us as African Americans, through that Nation of Islam, 5% Malachi Z. York-esque type of pseudo-religious teachings. So, reading that stuff did guide me away from drinking alcohol and cutting down on some of the other things that I was engaged in. One thing that I did find quite eye-opening is Sergeant Davis was threatened with some type of military sanction for fraternization, because it ended up being that not just myself, but other brothers began to sort of listen to him and cut out the drinking, cut out some of the other things that we were into. We spent more time reading. We had more, I want to say, a stronger, more healthy cohesion or relationship amongst ourselves. And I don't think that sat so well with some of our military superiors. And, I do believe that when you are drinking and smoking and running the streets and fighting in nightclubs and doing these types of things, I think the military has an idea of where you're at. I think you're more easily controlled. And we were sort of moving away from that mentality, that type of thinking. We were maturing and growing. And for those of you who read the autobiography of Malcolm X, you know what I'm talking about. We began to look at things different. That was in the era of Public Enemy and X-Clan and all of these other groups. So we started off on that path. So anyway, Davis was getting in trouble. They were having talks with him and threatening him. All the while, the other soldiers who were not from our group were having barbecues and parties and this, that, and the third at other sergeants' houses, but nothing was being said to them, which really solidified to me the truth. And that was really when I began to see some of the isms that exist in the military. So at that point, I still hadn't taken what we call the Shahada or the Shahadatain, which is the verbal declaration of belief in the oneness of the Creator, and that he has no partners, he has no equals, and that the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is his final messenger, slave, and prophet. Hadn't done that yet. I was just reading. I'm like inhaling books. I'm reading stuff left and right, all the while listening to all this Public Enemy and X-Clan and all this other stuff. So fast forward. End up getting the word that my unit is being activated to go to Turkey. So we load up, hop on C-130s, airplanes, load up all our gear, our weapons, and all, ammunition. And, I was what's called an M60 gunner. You can Google what an M60 is. That's the gun that's the weapon that was my daily weapon. An M60, an M16 machine gun, and a 45. Those were my three primary weapons that I kept with me at all times. We loaded all of our gear onto these planes and we went to Incirlik, Turkey. We landed in Turkey, and then we were sitting on the tarmac with all of our bags and everything, and everybody just was chilling out, waiting to find out what we do next. And then these buses pulled up, and we were told to load on these buses. We're getting on buses. Where are we going? So we load all the gear on these big buses, like big Greyhound type buses. And then we all hop on. I don't even remember specifics of how many buses it was, but it's enough buses to take an entire company of military police plus all of our gear, everything. So it's a lot of buses. And we ride, and we end up going off of the military base, and we're riding. And next thing you know, we're out in the middle of nowhere, and no idea of where we're at or where we're going or what's going on. And at one point, I'm sitting next to the window with my M60 machine gun between my legs, and I'm sort of leaning back, and I look out of the window, and I see a guy in a tower pointing an AK-47 at me through the tower. Well, of course, I panicked. And when I yell gun, everybody else start panicking. And then the captain, who happened to be on the bus, told us to chill out, that, don't engage, don't do anything, blah, blah, blah. And we're like, who is that guy? He's a Syrian border guard. Why, Syrian border guard? Why are we near? Long story short, we ended up going to northern Iraq along the border of Syria and went in through the north. They didn't inform us that we were going to Iraq. They just told us we were going to Turkey. Now, let me go back a little bit. Maybe 2 months prior to this deployment is when I took my Shahada, or what I believe to be my Shahada. Okay? 2 months prior to deployment. So from the moment of the Shahadatain to the moment of deployment, that's the amount of Quran and Sunnah that you could estimate that I had with me. I didn't have much. I didn't know anything. So we ended up going to northern Iraq, and we were on a post that was inhabited by other coalition forces. There were British Royal Marines there, and I think there were some Belgians there, and Spanish, and it was a little bit of everybody there. And everybody was running missions. So as I spent time there, that was really the first time that I had ever heard the adhan, like ever, besides hearing it like in rap songs and hearing it like in Iraq, they have masajid everywhere. And it was crazy too, because when the adhan would come on, I would perk up and I would love it. And the other soldiers who weren't Muslim, oh, here they go again. They would always put their hands over their ears. Oh, I hate this. When are they going to be done with this? This is stupid. Blah, 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 blah. I used to love it. So there were 3 or 4 of us at that time in the unit that were Muslim. So for me, going to Iraq was an opportunity to learn. It was an opportunity to learn about the religion and to be around Muslims. It wasn't an opportunity like some of the other people in my unit. It's not an opportunity to get involved into other things. I'll just leave it at that. There were a few, I can't remember if they were Kurds or Iraqis, who were allowed to stay on our post. And somehow, some way, either through us or through someone else, the word got to them that we were Muslim. And they used to invite us to go with them at night to where they were staying on the base, and they would read the Quran by candlelight, and we would sit and listen. We would hear again the call to prayer in the morning. They would read the Quran. It was in Iraq that I learned how to pray, that I learned how to make salah with them, that I learned. My love for the Muslim began to develop, because remember, I'm brand new. I'm just happy to be a Muslim. I don't really know what it means, in totality. I don't really know. But I'm just glad that I'm Muslim. And then when the word got out amongst the locals that there were some soldiers who were Muslim, I can't lie to you. They embraced me. How I was treated, I was given cold water. I was given fresh food, rice, chicken, lamb. And I'm sure the other brothers had the same experience. I can only speak for me. Once the word got out, I had them ask me, "Are you the Muslim?" And how I was treated was different. And you could see the eyebrows raised amongst some of the other soldiers and some of the other leadership, because it was obvious that they had an affinity for myself and some of the other brothers, and how they talked to us and how they greeted us and would smile and attempt to communicate with us, but they didn't really do that with everyone else. I remember one situation where, again, I was an M60 gunner. So if you know what a Humvee truck is, there's a turret up top, and the guy stands up top, and the big gun is mounted up there, and the guy stands up there, and his job is to destroy anything that needs to be destroyed. That's where I was. Well, I would ride up there with a mask on and goggles, because we're riding and it's dust and dirt and stuff flying all over the place. So sometimes I would get tired of riding up there, and I'd say, "Hey, let me get down and walk. Let me walk." So we were in just one part of the city one time, and I'm walking alongside the Humvee. The Humvee is sort of creeping, and I'm walking. I'm tired of riding up there. I'm walking. I'm happy to just be walking, feet on the ground. Got my M16. I'm the only one outside of the vehicle. Nobody else was in my M60 turret. So as we're walking, we see this kid in the distance. He's a good distance away, and he's running toward us. And he's got this big Kool-Aid smile on his face, and he's running toward us. And the guys that were with me began to yell, "Shoot him, shoot him." And they panicked. And they were yelling, "Shoot him, shoot him." And I'm the only one that's outside the vehicle. So I'm like, I don't know what to do. And they're yelling, shoot him. So I raise my M16 and I'm looking at this boy. I'm looking through the iron sights of my M16 and I'm looking in the dead center of his chest with my finger on the trigger. And I just he's smiling. He doesn't have a grimace. He doesn't have, and he's got like this big grin on his face. And I'm like, and they're the whole time they're shoot him, shoot him, shoot him, shoot him. I couldn't shoot him. I couldn't bring myself to do it. He ended up making his way all the way to us. He grabbed my uniform in Arabic. He said, "Come with me," and he pulled and he motioned. He takes off running the other direction. I'll try to, attention spans and all that. I'll try to make the story short. So anyway, we follow this kid. This kid has got a good distance on us. He's running. He knows where he's going. We're unsure of what's even going on. We don't know what this kid wants. Is he taking us into an ambush? Who is this kid? Is somebody hurt? We don't know anything. So we're just following him. And I'm running alongside the vehicle. And then he runs into this, like a big black iron door. He goes in and the door closes behind him. It's a big black iron door. And it's like a wall that goes all around, not of a building, but like a four-cornered wall that went all the way around, like a guardian wall that you can't see over. So we're standing outside and we're like, okay, what is this? And the kid doesn't come back out. So I sling my M16 and I pull my 45. My other two teammates had their M16s and we're on the corners of the door. We push the door open. The first guy goes in, then I come in with my 45 and the other guy comes in. And when we get in there, we notice there's a bunch of people in there and they're all sitting on the ground. They're all sitting down. We're like, what is this? And everyone has their hands up and they look scared and the women are covering their faces and and we're pointing guns at them and telling everybody to keep their hands where we can see them. And then, like the entire picture had to be taken in. I look and I notice that it's a table there, like a short table, big table, but it was low to the ground, full of food. And I see the face of the boy. He's looking at me like, what are you guys doing? And then it hit me. I said, hey, Sergeant, I think this kid was inviting us to come eat. And he was like, what? I said, look. I think he was inviting us to come eat at his house. And he was like, oh my gosh. So everybody holstered their weapons. We put our hands up and said sorry in English. Everybody calmed down. And these Iraqis who we were just pointing weapons at, maybe they were Kurds. I don't know. I can't remember. It was so long ago. I get them mixed up. More than likely they were Kurds. More than likely. But Allahu Akbar. They make space for us and they feed us. They feed us all this food, rice and chicken, and we're just drinking cold water. Notice I keep going back to cold water because we're in Iraq in the summertime. It's hot. Cold water is a commodity. Ice is not, it's not like here where you just go to the freezer and grab some ice and make a cold cup. No. So it's a glass of cold water is a commodity. They're giving us cold water by the cups. We're just smashing these plates of rice. And I remember feeling a certain kind of way about that situation. I remember I kept looking at my sergeant and kept looking at the other guys that were telling me to shoot that boy. And they would look at me and look down and keep eating. And I would look at them again. They would look at me and they would look down. They couldn't even look at me. They didn't really look at the people. They didn't really have that much interaction with the people. I'm glad I didn't shoot that boy, because I'm sure that would have messed me up today. So I ended up fast forward. I'm going to fast forward here. I'm going to hurry up. Years later, I ended up leaving the military, and went to the Ohio State University. Um, I didn't do so well my first time around in the university. I didn't really know what to expect or what to do. I just knew that I didn't want to stay in the military. So I went to Ohio State, and my father lived in another city in Ohio, and he needed help with some things with a business. So I left Ohio State, went back to him, and went to college in that city. Um, my first time around in that school was better than my first time around at Ohio State University. I ended up joining a fraternity. So I was a member of Phi Beta Sigma Fraternity Incorporated, blue and white. For those of you who may know the colors, I joined Phi Beta Sigma Fraternity. While I was in the military, I actually became a Mason as well, which I do not affiliate with today in any way, shape, fashion, or form. I do not affiliate with the Masonic Order, although I did it for a number of years while I was in the military, and I was Prince Hall affiliated, PHA. That's dead. I ended up joining a fraternity, and I actually had one of my best semesters because the fraternity required study tables. Our chapter, our big brothers, required study tables to keep our grades up. Because to even join a fraternity, you had to have a certain GPA, and that wasn't really negotiable. You had to have a higher GPA. So I had to get to where I needed to be, and then we had to maintain it through study tables. So fast forward, when I finally left school, and I left school without my degree, I was now in a position that I didn't know what I wanted to do. And I had just began to learn more and more about Islam and the Sunnah of the Prophet, alayhi salatu wassalam, and learn about the Quran and read it and study, go to lectures and conferences and things. And I really began to develop. For those who remember QSS, I was heavy into the QSS conferences and tapes and Dawood Adib and Abu Usama and some of the Mashayikh from Jordan and from Saudi, and I'm just taking it all in. I'm reading crazy. I'm conferencing. I'm listening to. I had so many little cassette tapes. It was crazy. They'd be all over the place. But I had a guy that I knew that had moved to Egypt, and he was teaching English. So I said to myself, I want to go to Egypt too, and I want to study Arabic, and I want to get out of the U.S. and go see something else. So that's what I did. So I ended up moving to Egypt at the beginning, the very, very beginning of 2010, all the way to almost 2015. I was in country, days after they took down Hosni Mubarak, the president of Egypt. So the military was still in the streets. There were still curfews. There were tanks. There were police everywhere, and military and soldiers, and it was. I'd gotten there like directly after that happened. I enrolled in an Arabic institute over there. Actually, yeah, I enrolled in the institute, and I had a teacher. His name was Sheikh Ahmed, and he ran an Arabic language school for foreigners. So I studied there. The beauty of studying in country is that what you learn in the classroom, you can then utilize in the street. The problem is when you study Lughatul Fusha, Fusha is what you would call the classical Arabic. It's the Arabic that you will find the Quran written in. It's the Arabic that the books of ilm are written in. It's the language of the ulama, the scholars. So the lay people really are not hip to really speaking in Fusha. So sometimes when this is just sort of a side note, when you would speak to them in Fusha, sometimes they would look at you like you were crazy. Like, what? Like, what are you talking about? They didn't really understand it. But if you spoke to the more educated or the other tulab al-ilm who studied, they understood it because they were studying it. So I studied in Egypt for a while. I worked at a few different international bilingual schools teaching English. My experiences in Kuwait, in Egypt, were really what molded my understanding of Islam. Many of the things that I had been taught prior to that I had been taught were black and white, were actually had areas of gray as well. Everything wasn't binary. Everything was not X's and O's, black and white, this or that. And unfortunately, that's what a lot of us African Americans were taught by people who weren't necessarily in our community. I remember going through a phase or an era where we were being taught, and I swallowed it for a while, that we shouldn't be involved in secular education because secular education is dunya, is chasing dunya. And in order to get a secular education, you have to free mix and you have to be in the classroom with females, and that's haram, and you can't do this and you can't do that. The whole while, other demographics, other groups are steady becoming doctors, engineers, architects, lawyers. They're getting that secular education, which affords them the opportunity to have, affluent Muslim communities, buy nice homes, send their children to nice schools, and most importantly, maintain the masjid by donations alone, to facilitate and fund functions and family-oriented gatherings and picnics and basketball leagues and women's groups and study groups, and bring people over from other countries during the month of Ramadan to lead the Tarawih. Money does these things. How do you make it to Hajj without money? How do you make Umrah without money? So the whole time, the African American Muslim community was being told, to stay away from secular education because it's a form of chasing dunya and we don't need it. And, the free mixing, other groups and other demographics are steady going to school, steady getting degrees, becoming doctors and the likes. I eventually, especially once I hit Egypt, got out of that mode of thinking. I learned that everything is not black and white. Everything is not, and I learned a little bit of fiqh and some application of fiqh. The beauty of being in a Muslim country with scholars and strong students is that you can ask questions. You don't have to wait and ask unqualified people or people maybe who are not from your community and don't understand your reality. You're able to ask people who are qualified to answer these questions. And I found out that, basically education is a must in this world. I'm not going to say it's a must. I don't want to put it that way because a person can have a trade as well. The point is having some type of an education that can afford you to maintain a family, if you're a man, to the best of your ability, and to pay for things that need to be paid for, and to be able to the best of your ability, fund your community and fund, all the things that make a community a healthy community. The masjid ceiling falls in. Who's going to fix it? It's going to be the community. The community that I'm in right now, I didn't go on that night, but the word is on the 27th night of Ramadan, they had a fundraiser and fundraised $1.5 million. That was the goal. 1.5. So to even have aspirations of gathering $1.5 million in one night should tell you the level of income of some of the people who are in that community. So obvious, and they're not all entrepreneurs and whatnot. They're not all tradesmen. A lot of them are doctors. A lot of them are architects and engineers and chemical engineers and industrial engineers and all these different types of high level professional degrees. They have them, and they're able to then fund their communities, fund quality education, send their children overseas to study when they get of age. So secular education is important. Okay, so I'm in Egypt. I'm learning all of this life information. I'm learning or expanding my understanding of things that I thought I understood previously, but was actually given, again, that binary understanding of the application of certain ayats in the Quran and certain things. Going to Egypt was one of the best moves that I made Islamically. I was in Egypt during the time directly after Hosni Mubarak. I was there during that interim period when they didn't have a president at all. I was there during the election campaign of Mohammed Morsi and Ahmed Shafiq. I think that was his name, Ahmed Shafiq. I was there when Mohammed Morsi won. I was there when Mohammed Morsi got toppled by Sisi, who is now the current president. So I was there for all of that, and I watched it all on TV. I watched it unfold. I saw the protest and the violence, and I saw all of that. And I can make videos on that, but I'll save that for another day. Once I left Egypt, I came back to the U.S. And one of the reasons that I came back is when I looked at other countries. Okay, they're protesting over here, and it's getting hot. What if I need to take my family and go to another country real quick? Where can I go? So I'm looking at surrounding countries, not only in the Middle East, North Africa, but also Southeast Asia. And every country all have one thing in common. The expectation was you were degreed. You had to have a college degree to get a work visa. And that's another thing about education and having degrees, that oftentimes, if you really want to come into a country legally and be there and work, one of the requirements is they expect you to have a degree in order to get that work visa. Unless you come in and marry one of the women there, and then you can sort of slide in, that's one thing. But if you just come in and you want to live there and work and grow and study and all, got to come in with a degree. Most countries, unless it's one of the developing countries, and Egypt is a developing country. So if you are a native English speaker, you can go to Egypt today. Hop on a plane, no visa. You'll get the visa in the airport, $25 US. Stamp your passport. You're in the country. From there, there's institutes you can study. You can do this and do that. But the visa thing is really, really a pain in the backside right now. Like, they're pretty adamant about making sure that your visa is up to date in your paperwork, because the police can roll up on you at any time. And if your stuff ain't right, you're either going to jail or you're going directly to the airport, and they're going to deport you and you can never go back. And I know somebody that happened to. He got put out. He ended up going to Yemen, but it was his fault that he got put out. He was out after curfew. There was a curfew put in place, and I don't know what he was thinking, but he was on the street and he got snatched. Anyway, long story short, the countries that I was interested in and that I was looking at all required degrees. So I said to myself, I have been in school long enough that I would be at the beginning of what would be my senior year in college. And I was studying like criminal justice at that time. I wasn't mathematically leaning. I didn't really like math. I just wanted to get a degree and get out of school. I didn't really have a focus. I didn't have good, I didn't have an academic mentor. I didn't have anyone to really guide me. I was really doing the whole process on my own, just doing the best that I could and just trying to make it. So I made it to what would be my senior year in college. When I went back to UC from Egypt, North Africa, I went back to the school, and I sat with the academic advisor. In my mind, I'm coming back here for one academic year, getting my degree, and I'm out. Well, we planned, but Allah is the best of planners. Come to find out that the college had switched from semesters, or from quarters to semesters. Quarters are only 9 weeks. Semesters are 15 or 16 weeks. So that changed the game up for the calculation of my credits. So when they recalculated everything, I had to go all the way back to the beginning of my junior year in order to go forward. I couldn't start I had to go back an entire year. So in essence, I had to do 2 years instead of just one. Well, I'm back from Africa. I'm all the way back now. I'm not just going to say no. So whatever. Come on. And then I had to choose a major. So when I'm looking at majors, again, I didn't really have that guidance like you should choose something that has great money making potential when you graduate. I wasn't thinking go to medical school or become a lawyer or engineer. I wasn't thinking. I'm like, okay, all I need is a degree in order to get back on an airplane and go back overseas. That was my mission. Get any degree, get back on the airplane and get up out of here. I ended up choosing sociology, as many of you know, for my bachelor's degree. And I absolutely loved that science. I loved the study. I loved the information. And it was just, a lot of it was just, it compartmentalized everything for you. Like it put it into a neat package so you could digest it. There's so many different issues and so many different, racism and this ism and that ism and history and this version of history and that version of history and capitalism and liberalism and conservatism and ism and all these different just stuff. And it taught you how to bring it down to a digestible size and to understand it properly, how to weed through garbage, how to do research, like actual scientific research using scientific methods. Did very well in my bachelor's degree. Was on the dean's list a couple times. Then the university offered me an accelerated master's degree in sociology. I was like, nope, I'm out. I'm leaving the country. I'm good. Appreciate the offer though. Summer hit. And then I started thinking, well, if these countries around the world are now asking for a bachelor's degree, at some point, they're going to be offering, or they're going to be asking for master's degrees. They're going to be asking for advanced, and then maybe at some point, professional degrees, meaning doctorate degrees, PhDs, MDs, JDs, etc. Let me go ahead and take them up on this offer. Plus, they're going to pay 25% of the bill. Yeah, let me go ahead and do that. So I called the school back. I called my department back. I said, look, if the offer is still on the table, because I'd gone online to look it up and it was closed. The window was closed to get into the program, to apply to get in. When I called them, the university, and off the top, they said, no problem. Give us a few hours to open it up. They called me back and said, okay, please go online. And I was able, they opened up the window for me to be able to come into the program. They opened it up. And I mean, it was closed. So I'm very, very thankful to the university for that. Anyway, joined the program, did a master's degree, loved my master's degree experience, loved my entire collegiate experience, good and bad, learned a lot, saw what not towing the line looks like. I saw what happened to others who towed the line but still caught wreck at the end, who sold out, and they ended up not getting what they wanted to get out of it. I saw the result of that. Academia is a different beast. It is a different beast. It's a different world. So you really have to know how to maneuver and how to navigate through it. My navigation tool was Islam. Alhamdulilah. Alhamdulillah for Islam. Ni'mati Islam. I mean, it's without Islam, I would have been hit. Islam was my guide. Islam was my filter through which everything was filtered. That was the prism. Information that I would get, I would filter it through Islam. So what aligned with the Quran and the Sunnah and what I understood is what I kept. Everything else was categorized as this is just information. Maybe I need to know it for a test or whatever. But the filter, Islam is the filter. Islam is the moral compass. It's the character. It's the morals. It's the values. It's the set your perimeters for what you can and can't do. And I never exceeded that for a grade or for nothing. And I fought some battles in school. And again, I can make a video about that too. Some of the battles that I had to fight in school. I got brought up on Title IX charges for hate speech in the classroom one time. Just different situations that hit me because I stand on what I stand on, and that's Islam. That's the Quran and the Sunnah and the understanding of the Salaf Saleh. That's how I understand Islam. That's how I was raised. That's what I believe to be true. Ride or die. It is what it is. And that's what I stood on. And it wasn't always accepted and it wasn't always liked, but it is what it is. Anyway, fast forward. I moved to Kuwait. I worked at a school in Kuwait in a city called Salmiya. And my time in Kuwait, if I could go back to Kuwait with the right job today, I would be on an airplane. Kuwait was beautiful. The experience, the brothers there in the school, the access to ulama. I mean, scholars that you see on YouTube video, some of them are in Kuwait and they were just in the masjid. You could walk in, sit down, and boom, have a class. It was wonderful. Kuwait is a beautiful city. The people there are great, and the access to ilm, the access to masajid easily is just, living in a Muslim country is like nothing. If you've never experienced it, it's hard to explain it to you. It's the best. The school that I worked in was an Islamic school, so it had an Islamic department with master's degree holders in hadith and fiqh and aqidah and different aspects of the religion. So even when I was not out studying, I could still hang out in the Islamic studies department and ask questions and write things and work on my Arabic. And I mean, the whole experience was great. So I ended up leaving Kuwait. I had an issue with a supervisor and I had to come back anyway to take care of some old military things that some things I had to take care of. I'll just leave it at that. And so when I came back and I'm working the things that I needed to work, boom, COVID hits. COVID shut the game down. Couldn't get back out of the country again. Was stuck in the country, and then I ended up catching COVID, and I got really sick. Sick. I went from 225 pounds of muscle working out to like 182 pounds in a little more than 30 days. I stopped eating, no appetite. I just shrunk. I got really weak. I really didn't think I was going to make it. Alhamdulilah, I made it, but I didn't think that I was going to make it. Like I had almost given up. I was so sick from COVID. So anybody who tells you COVID is a lie and COVID is just the flu and COVID. Okay. Luckily, I can't say what I really want to say, but let's just say I disagree with that wholeheartedly, fundamentally. Disagree with that. Stuck in the country, and then I was trying to then figure out what I wanted to do next. I was through with academics at that point. I'm like, I'm done. But I have a couple brothers that I'm cool with that are PhD holders, and I can't lie, I got a little jealous, and I would talk to them, and I got the academic bug in me. I enrolled in the Islamic University of Malaysia in the doctoral program, the PhD program. I study Islamic education as of now, social foundations and leadership. So if anyone has an Islamic school and they need educators, I always understood our schools to be underrepresented by qualified teachers, qualified leadership. And I felt that was important. So I studied Islamic education. Um, I'm in the beginning of what would be my third year. I'm at the end of my second year, more so. Um, I fund my own education. I don't have funding at all. I don't have any loans out. Remember, this school is overseas. And due to COVID, we had some mandatory classes that we had to take. And the classes were set up to be in the classroom. And due to COVID, none of the foreigners, nobody could go back into the classroom, even in Malaysia. So after setting back, pushing us back, pushing us back, pushing us back, pushing us back, they finally decided, we're going to set these classes up for you to do them online. So I did the 3 core classes that I had to do online. One of them was a really interesting class on the Islamization of education and the Islamization of knowledge. Um, I can post a video or I can explain it to you another time, but it's a really, really good concept that needs to be applied here in America with the Muslims in the Muslim schools, as well as it has cross application if you know how to apply it to African American schools. Everything that I do, I try to give it dual application between the regular African American community and the African American Muslim community. Everything that I do and everything that I intake, I think, how does this apply to black people? How does this apply to black Muslims? How do both groups benefit in application? If we apply this, how do they benefit? So that's the focus of my study. With the IOE and the IOK, the Islamization of education and the Islamization of knowledge, that also has application to the general Muslim community. I love the fact that it's expansive. It's not just focused on one group, but different demographics can benefit from it depending upon who wants to apply it, who understands it properly, who wants to apply it. I really like that. So I can go to an Arab country and I could apply it. I can go to an African American community school and I could apply it. I could help the Muslims if they want to build a school and have the proper Islamic curriculum. I could help them to put that into effect, because the schools that we have here in the U.S. are Muslim schools, not necessarily Islamic schools. There is a difference between a Muslim school and an Islamic school. And I can, again, get into that, but I'll save that for another day. Anything that I've touched on so far that I've talked about, please feel free to put it in the comments and say, hey, could you expound on that? Or, hey, can you make another video about that? And I can, see what it is and see, if I can give some further explanation on it. So as of now, I am studying in the Islamic University of Malaysia. Unfortunately, I had to take last semester off, not because I wanted to, but because I had issues with paying the bill. I didn't have the money to pay the bill, and I'm still sitting on a bill. I don't know how this works. I don't know all the ins and outs, but if anybody wants to help, let me know. I can let you know how to do it. Anybody wants to help fund this, I'm accepting help. Because again, I fund the whole thing right now on my own. And if nobody helps, I'm still going to do my best to do it on my own, because it has to get done. We don't have enough, especially African American leadership, qualified educators who have actually studied and are credentialed and know our community. Likewise, again, the skill set applies to other demographics. So it's expansive. So again, anybody wants to help, hit me up, let me know. I can tell you, what needs to be done. And any and everything goes towards school. Nothing is personal. Nothing is, it 100% goes to school, and it can be verified. I can screenshot, show you, let you see it, whatever the case may be, whatever makes you feel comfortable. Anyway, that is where I am going to leave it. I'm trying to think if there anything else, because I know what's going to happen. As soon as I finish this, I'm going to say, oh man, I should have said this. Oh man, I should have said that. And I know I probably left some stuff out. Oh, if anybody wants to know how to apply to the International Islamic University of Malaysia, they have online degree programs that you can get into. Religious, if you want to learn the religious aspects, if you want to learn the Arabic, if you want to learn Hadith, if you want to learn, and then they have a more secular aspect to the university, which is still the asl of it, the basis of it is still religious. So you can learn certain things with a religious basis. It's really beautiful. It's really nice. I really like how the university has it set up. And if it helps people to understand who have never heard of the IIUM, or International Islamic University in Malaysia, it's the same school that Omar Suleiman, the director or founder or whatever of Yaqeen Institute, that may ring a bell with some of you. Same university he graduated from, with a PhD degree, a doctorate degree. So I'm not sure what his degree is, but it's probably a good chance we were in the same college, the same kuliya. So Allahu Alam. Anyway, that's the video. That's the message for the day. Anything that I said that was correct is from Allah. Anything that I said that was wrong or incorrect was from myself and the shaitan, and I ask for forgiveness. I love the Muslims. I love black people, and I want us to flourish. I want us to do better. I want us to be better Muslims, better human beings. I want us to treat each other better. To get to know one another. Allah said in the Quran that he divided us into nations and groups so that we may do what? Fight each other? No, get to know one another. Get to know one another. And that's what I would ultimately like to see. Islam is a beautiful religion for anyone that is contemplating it. Best decision I ever made in my life. And I used to be a Christian. I wasn't the most religious Christian, transparency, or to be transparent, but I grew up as a Christian nonetheless. So I knew the sect of Christianity, which my family was affiliated with, which was two different, Episcopal and Baptist. So I went to both churches and, visited family down south and went to the church down south. And also, I was familiar. I actually became a better student in understanding the Bible and the history once I became Muslim. I really started studying hard when I became Muslim. I mean, I was banging out books left and right, studying, man. I was hungry, really hungry. Anything that anybody wants to hear? Comments? Good or bad, agree, disagree. I do my best to monitor the chats, and try to respond to people as they leave messages, and hopefully, from this maybe some good will come. Please, how do they say it on the other videos? Like and subscribe and share and all of that. If you find this video to be beneficial, please send it to somebody, who's contemplating or thinking about becoming Muslim. It could help them. I did a television show when I was in Kuwait, or I keep saying Kuwait, when I was in Cairo, and it was on Huda TV. I was in a city called 6th of October, which is right next to Giza, where the pyramids are. And I told basically the same story. The story that I told today, I added more detail. But when I was on television, I gave like a shortened version of it. It only took about 30 minutes. But at the end, Alhamdulilah, somebody called into the television station and took their shahada. And that video, you can find it on my YouTube channel. So if you want to see it, it's there. I forgot the title of the video, but it's on there. You can see it if you really want to see it. So hopefully everyone is doing well, and like the video, inshallah. Barakallahu feekum wa jazakum Allahu khairan. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.